From the nation's capital in Washington, D.C., Cole on Congress. The program discussing national issues that affect Oklahoma. Your host, U.S. Representative Tom Cole.
Thank you for joining me today for another episode of Cole on Congress. Today I'm pleased to welcome my good friend Congressman Billy Long of the great state of Missouri. He's a former realtor, small business owner, and auctioneer, which we'll talk about. Billy's also hosted a radio talk show and has been inducted to the Missouri Professional Auctioneers Hall of Fame. Since 1911, Billy has served the southwest part of Missouri, the 7th Congressional District. He's a member of the influential Energy and Commerce Committee, and I'm not even going to begin to tell you how he got on that committee, although maybe I could be prevailed upon later. Billy, thanks for joining me today. And I have to tell you, you have been, it was great when your whole class arrived here because, of course, you transformed us from minority into majority, and I think honestly a much more courageous and effective majority than we'd ever been before. I mean, I'm not sure we're always the smartest guys in the world, but I don't have much doubt we're trying to do the right thing, and we're willing to run some risk and take some criticism to do it. And that's your class.
It was an honor to come in with that class, and I think that people looked at it like the cavalry had arrived, and we changed the way things are done in Washington. So I'm honored to be part of that class.
Well, what got you to run the first place? You were obviously a very successful business person, and why disrupt that life?
I had in my mind that I wanted to do this back in the 90s when my predecessor Roy Blunt ran for the seat. But our girls were 7 and 10, and in my heart I wanted to run, but in my head it wasn't really a practical matter, so I didn't give it a lot of thought. But this time when Senator Bond retired and Roy Blunt said, I'm going to run for that seat, I said, I'm in. I was the first one to put my name in a hat. I think the Founding Fathers envisioned citizen legislators, people that have run businesses and signed the front of a check to come up here and serve in Congress instead of people who have just been in Congress all their life.
Well, and let's describe your district, Southwest Missouri, but probably more Americans have been to your district than most districts in the country because you've got
Branson, Missouri.
There you go.
Springfield, Missouri, Branson, and Joplin, Missouri. So got a great district. Butts up against Oklahoma, of course, and we're down in the southwest corner of the state. There's 11 counties in the 7th District of Missouri. So it's about an hour and a half each way to cover the district. So it's a big district, but not Sam Graves in northern Missouri goes coast to coast. He goes from Illinois over to Kansas, so he has to cover the whole state.
Well, shortly after you got elected, you had really one of the great tragedies in the country happen as a freshman congressman. We deal with these sorts of things, of course, in Oklahoma, but tell us a little bit what it was like to be the guy representing Joplin, Missouri, when we had that awful tornado that just ripped the town up and killed dozens and dozens of people.
Yeah, it was really a welcome to Congress moment, I guess you could say. It was May 22nd of 2011, and it was my daughter's birthday, and we have a friend that has a birthday the same date, so we were over at their house celebrating 2 birthdays, and we got word our district director down in the Joplin area called and said we've been hit by a tornado. And we said, oh, okay. We didn't think that much of it because we're in Tornado Alley, just like you are in Oklahoma. We have tornadoes all the time. And then on the news in Springfield, which is 70 miles to the east, it came on and said there's a tornado right outside of Springfield. There's debris. Well, there wasn't a tornado outside of Springfield. It was debris from the Joplin tornado. We had x-rays from the hospital in Joplin that were delivered to Springfield via the tornado. But we ran home. There was no basement in the house we were in. We really thought it was at the edge of Springfield. And then when it evolved and we found out how terrible it was, then we made the decision. I was supposed to come back up here in Washington the next day, but I canceled all those plans, and we got down to Joplin at daybreak the next day. And when we got there, there was 450, 500 first responders already there, but it was a bad morning. The weather was bad. It was windy, it was rainy, it was lightning, and we had to wait before we could even go out on search and rescue. But it was an F5 tornado that was on the ground for 6 miles, which is incredible. Normally an F5 will stay on the ground quarter mile, half mile, but this was 3/4 of a mile wide, 6 miles in depth, and it just clear cut everything.
We had one actually in '99 through my hometown. It was an F5. It's actually the first recorded F5. It was on the ground for 80 miles. And took out 6,000 houses in Oklahoma City, 1,000 in my hometown. And fortunately, it actually cut through an area. We went right through this metropolitan heart of the state. when we lost 47 people, not as bad as what had happen in Joplin, but bad enough. We had plenty of warning, but had it gone a little bit to the south or a little bit to the north, both the death toll and the damage would have been higher. So, and I had one of these things when I first got elected, 2003. One followed the same path of that tornado, again right through my hometown. So I have some idea, but boy, for a new staff to have to deal with it, because I think people don't think about there's disaster relief, there's FEMA interaction. You've got traumatized people, you've got businesses that have been destroyed. How did you and your team deal with something like that?
We had 161 people that were killed. Now this is a town of 50,000 people.
Right.
This is not a town the size of Oklahoma City. And you had 161 people killed, 8,000 homes destroyed, 54% of the school capacity, but yet they opened schools 100 days later on time. They got out and found temporary space and put the kids back in school, so it was pretty miraculous. But what I did, I say in a situation like that, you don't react, you just act. We just showed up. I went in my cowboy boots and hat and jeans, and I didn't roll in saying, hey, I'm the congressman, I'm here to help, ride in on the white horse. A lot of people didn't even know I was the congressman. I'd only been in about 4 or 5 months, and so we just pitched in and helped with everyone else. And then as the days unfolded, I was on the ground 8 days, and we really did a lot of good. My office did, which I completely changed my take on what a politician should do during a disaster, because in the past I'd always seen the governor go in or senators go in, congressmen, to these situations, whether it was flood or tornado or hurricane, whatever, and I thought, well, they're kind of wasting resources. They could be helping people instead of putting the governor's picture on TV or the congressman's picture on TV. But I changed 180 degrees because we really did a lot of good. And the day after the tornado, they blocked off all the streets that were remaining, and they had to write on the street the name of the street, like 20th Street, because no one that lived there all their life, they were lost. They didn't know where they were. There were no landmarks. And so that was one thing. When they shut down the streets, people started coming in. There was a guy that worked for the hospital. There was a 7-story hospital that was destroyed, and whenever the guy came in to turn off the nuclear medicine machine, the police stopped him. They said, you can't get in. No cars can come in. So he ran over to the fire station where we were. A prominent businessman in Joplin that was housing 8 or 10 families in his house couldn't get into his house. And so I went to the fire chief. I said, hey, look, something needs to change. This deal of not letting people go down the street because you're afraid of looters is not working. And very shortly thereafter, they lifted that order. So that's one place we were beneficial. Another place that I was real proud of that I was beneficial was the governor came to town and had a meeting up on the stage there at the university, at Missouri State Southern University. And there was a lady came up to me after the meeting, and she said, hey, can you help me? And I was on a 4-foot stage above her, and I was looking down at her, and I said, I don't know, ma'am, what do you need? And she said, my husband just got shipped out to Afghanistan, and I need him here. I have 3 children. Our neighbors were killed. Our house has a lot of damage. I need my husband home. He just shipped out 2 weeks ago, and he's in Bagram Air Force Base, so he's not deployed. He can come home. And I said, well, who do you need to talk to? She said, the Red Cross. Well, you couldn't swing a dead cat and not hit somebody from the Red Cross there. They were everywhere. And I said, well, have you talked to the Red Cross here? And she said, no, they were too busy to talk to me. Excuse me. She said, but I did talk to the Red Cross up in Jefferson City, up in the state capitol, and they put in the request to Fort Sill, and they turned him down. They won't let him come home. And I said, well, I don't know if I can do any good, but I'll tell you the same thing I tell everybody as a congressman. I can't promise good results, but I can promise good effort. She wrote down his name, rank, serial number, all that stuff, handed it to me, and I said, you wait here. And I walked across the parking lot where the Red Cross headquarters was, and I walked in, and they said, what do you need? And I said, well, who's the big muckety-muck in charge here? And they said, well, it's Mary Jo over there. So I went over and I said, Mary Jo, here's the deal. Got a lady, 3 kids, her house has a lot of damage, her neighbors were killed, her husband just got shipped out, she really needs him home. And I handed her the piece of paper, Tom, and she looked at it, and she said, that won't be a problem. I said, it what? She said, that won't be a problem. I said, you mean he can come home? Yeah, we can get him home. Now, this is after they'd been turned down by the Red Cross in Fort Sill. So I got on the cell phone, called her across the park, and I said, you need to get over here. Came in, made the introduction, and left her talking to the Red Cross. The next day, we were driving around with my district director, and I said, that lady and her husband that's at Bagram Air Force Base, did we ever hear back from her? He said, no. So he said, I'll call her. So he called her, and she was crying. She said, my husband is on a plane home. So those are the type of things that a congressman can do that people don't realizing I did not realize until I became a congressman.
No, it is amazing, and you just got to be willing though to use it. You got to be willing to make the effort that you talked about. Let me ask you this, because you haven't been here that long, but you're legislatively very adroit. I mean, honestly, you have a wonderful eye for an issue, and just as you did in that lady's situation, a tendency to act.
Right.
And a lot of guys sit around here and do, look, it's worth thinking about things, but at the end of the day, you do have to pull the trigger and start doing things. I was really impressed with the resolution that you had literally almost immediately after the financial crisis in Cyprus, where the government began, the European Union basically ordered them to start taking parts of people's savings account as part of the effort to stabilize the banking system with there. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that incident and then how you responded here?
I was flying out here on a Monday, and I got to Chicago and turned on my phone, and my Twitter account was going wild with all this in Cyprus, that they're going to start confiscating people's savings accounts from 6.75% to 15% of your savings. This is money you've earned, you've paid taxes on, you're saving it maybe for a car or for your kids' education. And Cyprus, to bail out their banks, was going to come in and take people's money and tax it, their savings. And I was just infuriated, as the people in Cyprus were too. So I came to my office, and that afternoon on Monday, we started writing a resolution that I took to the House floor on Tuesday and started walking around the floor getting co-sponsors on that resolution, saying that will not happen here. We want to get the support of the House that we're not going to let that type of thing happen in this country. And some people might say, oh, that type of thing would never happen here. Well, if you've been paying attention lately, there's a lot of things that have happened in our country that 5-10 years ago you would have never thought could have happened here. So, yeah, I'm very proud of that resolution.
Well, and I think, it's a very important sign because that's the sort of thing, once people start seeing happen, there's a run on banks. There are people that I don't care what you tell them, or it hadn't ever happened before. As you say, they've seen some things happen in the last few years they never expected to see happen in their lifetime. And that is very economically destabilizing if people don't have confidence in where they put the money they've saved, it's going to be safe.
This is savings. I mean, to bail out the banks, they're going to take, it's just the luck of the draw what bank you put your money in. Hey, we're going to tax you because your bank's having trouble. It was just ludicrous. It was crazy. And so that's why we did the resolution, because you tell me you're going to take 10% of my savings tomorrow, how long do you think it'll take me to get over to the bank and get my money out of there? And like you say, there would have been a terrible run on the banks, and that could happen in this country if we did the same thing.
Well, you've spent some time. Obviously, you come here with a very robust private sector background, and I think a real appreciation for who creates the wealth in the country, as opposed to, I always love when politicians talk about how many jobs they've created, and I thought, really, how that way? I used to run my own business. I never noticed nobody called me up from the government and said, here, I'm sending you a check down. I want you to hire some folks today.
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit about, your view of what we ought to be doing economically, because we all know we're not creating enough jobs in this country. We're not growing fast enough. What are the sorts of things that ought to happen that would incentivize private investment and development?
Well, I'm proud of something else that I've done since I've been here, and that's on the free trade issues. David Dreyer, Congressman Dreyer, came to me the second day I'd been here and wanted me to serve on a free trade working group. He said, we're trying to get these free trade agreements worked out with Korea, Panama, and Colombia, and we have a free trade working group, and I've read your literature, Billy, and I'd like to have you on this committee or this group. And well, it was the second day in Congress, so as a freshman, I'm happy to have anybody ask me to do anything.
And he was chairman of the Rules Committee, one of
Right.
the longest service, one of the leading members in the conference.
And so I served on the committee, and my first thought was, I'm proud to be asked. My second was, what a waste of time. They've been working on these 6 or 8 years. We'll never get these done. But what happened was unusual in this town. We had a meeting in the Rules Committee office, and we had Democrats there and Republicans both. We had a liaison from the White House, which I think was key. And the first 5 congressmen spoke up about how can we get the president off dead center? How can we get these free trade agreements worked out with Colombia, Panama, and Korea? And so the first 5 congressmen spoke up, and David stopped, and he said, all right, now that we've heard from the Republicans, let's hear from some Democrats. Well, the whole room busted out in laughter because the first 5 to speak were Democrats, but they sounded just like Republicans on free trade, so we thought, talk about an aha moment. We were aha now. And so we looked at that liaison. We said, go to the president, tell him we're all on the same sheet of music. Let's get these done. If you take manufacturing and farming out of this country, you don't have much left. There's a lot of manufacturing in my district. There's a little company, A1 Manufacturing, down in Joplin, Missouri. They manufacture parts for Caterpillar along with other people. They make the front end of the L trains in Chicago, the subway in New York. Little tiny company in Joplin, Missouri, you'd never dream. And we do a manufacturing tour once a year, and when we do, I'm so impressed with these employees that have been there. They come up and they're glad to meet the congressman. They're thrilled to meet their congressman, but they come and they're in their work clothes and they come off the assembly line and the boss will call them over, hey, come meet the congressman. And how long you been here? Well, I've been here 27 years. How about you? 18 years. How about you? 11 years. I've been here 33 years, Mr. Long. They're proud of their job, and these are hard jobs. But all they want to do is provide for their family. They're good, hard-working people like we've got scattered all over America. And those are the people that we need to help and open up these markets to where we can produce more goods and services across the world economy. And so free trade is one, and then the Russian free trade agreement, the permanent trade relations, that's a situation where the president claimed he was for that. There was an old Jackson-Vanik rule on the books from date back.
You might explain what Jackson-Vanik is, because most listeners won't know.
Back in the Cold War era, it was a law that was about civil rights and human rights and things to do when people couldn't immigrate out of Russia, which isn't a problem today. And so they had this rule on the books, but what it did, it hamstrung our employers. It didn't affect Russia. We were already trading with Russia. And but when they came into the WTO in July, that's what was key about it. Then if we had that law on the books, we couldn't take them to the WTO for any kind of adjudication or anything. So it was important we get that removed. And the president, another instance where he said, we'll do it, but he was on dead center. So I authored a letter, because they always call us the obstructionist freshmen, the 97 freshmen that don't want to get anything done. They want to stand in the president's way. And I wrote a letter and I said, Mr. President, I'm one of those 97 freshman obstructionist Republicans that you claim doesn't want to get anything done. But let me explain this Jackson-Vanik thing and the WTO and what we need to do to extend permanent normal trade relations with Russia. And I had 72 freshmen sign it. I didn't ask for any upperclassmen to sign it. And so that was pretty impressive. We sent it over to the president. Shortly thereafter, we got it done. So those are the type of things. Of course, our tax code in this country, our corporate tax rates are higher than anywhere in the world, and we need to flatten our tax code here for one thing and improve the corporate tax structure in this country.
Well, I tell you what, you're at the right committee. That and Ways and Means, you guys are going to be at the middle of these sorts of discussions going forward. So what kind of role do you see if you got to be king of the universe and design the tax code for the United States? What kind of tax code would you like to see us have?
Well, in all honesty, I'd like the fair tax. That was the first bill that I co-sponsored. The fair tax, no one can cheat on taxes anymore. There would be no IRS, so I hope people listen to this like that. And everyone would pay tax, whether you're here legally or illegally. When you buy a pack of gum or a hamburger or a car or whatever it is, you're going to pay your fair share. So I'm for the fair tax. Short of the fair tax, if we are not able to get that done, then we need a fair, flatter tax code, and that's what Chairman Camp's been working on night and day, trying to get done out of Ways and Means, and it's a tough slog.
It is. Well, you've also gotten to see a couple of budgets come your way in your time here. A couple of Ryan budgets, a couple of budgets by the president, including the latest one. Finally, a Senate budget. Evaluate those budgets for us a little bit and tell us again, if you got to decide what you'd want to do, how would you structure and deal with a situation where we're basically, spending about $1 trillion more a year than we're taking in, 3.5.
42% more than we take in. Try that for folks in Oklahoma or in Southwest Missouri. Can you spend 42% more than you take in, day out? And that's what we do in Washington. The Ryan budget that we did last year, it balanced, I think, in 21 years or something like that. This year, our Republican budget balances in 10 years. And the Democrats, I'm proud of the fact that we did put a bill on the floor called No Budget, No Pay. We'd stand out here on the lawn of the Capitol holding signs up how many days it had been since we had not had a budget passed. It finally got up over 1,000. It finally got up to 1,365 days.
By the Democratic Senate.
Yes, yeah, the Democrat Senate had not passed a budget. Thank you for that clarification. And so we were just furious that constitutionally they have to produce a budget by April 15th, but they just ignored it. Harry Reid and the Senate completely ignored it. So this year we did what I thought was brilliant, and maybe it was your idea. But
I wish I could claim credit, but no, it wasn't.
We'll give you credit anyway. But it was a bill called No Budget, No Pay. You don't produce a budget in the Senate, you don't get paid. Guess what happened? The next day, one of the senators came out and said, "Oh, by the way, boys, we've been working on that budget.
We were always planning to do that this
we'll
year.
have it out to you here shortly." So I don't know if the folks have kids or grandkids, but if they've ever seen Toy Story the movie, there's a character in there that I think Tim Allen voiced, and it was Buzz Lightyear. And Buzz Lightyear's tagline was "To infinity and beyond." He'd always say "To infinity and beyond." He was a space character. And so the Democrat budget, I call it the Buzz Lightyear budget, because when does it balance? To infinity and beyond. It never balances. And we've got the Republican budget that balances in 10 years. So now finally we're going to legislate like we're supposed to, which you probably haven't seen in a long time up here. We've got a House budget, a Senate budget. Now we can go to conference and come up with a workable budget for once. And I don't think it'll balance in 10 years like ours, but hope to goodness it won't balance in infinity like theirs, so we can bring the two together. And if it can balance in 15, 17 years, whatever, it's going to be a whole lot better off than what we have today.
No question. One of the problems I know that you're particularly focused on as well, and particularly the committee that you're on, is energy. You know, it is, we're both in the midst of an energy boom of unprecedented proportions in this country, or nearly unprecedented. I don't think we ever thought we'd see something like we're seeing now with shale gas and new areas of oil exploration open. But, you know, we've also got challenges across the board. We're still importing a lot of energy. So, again, talk to me a little bit about what you'd like to accomplish long-term in energy legislation.
Well, I always go to the common sense factor and the Keystone XL pipeline.
You'll never succeed up here.
But it's worked pretty good first couple of years. But the Keystone XL pipeline definitely needs to be built, and the president has been on the horns of a dilemma. He's been between his unions that want to build the pipeline and his environmentalists that think it'd be just terribly dangerous. You pull up a pipeline map of the United States, go to Google and put in pipelines across the U.S. and get a map. The whole country is red, green, or blue, whatever different colors the pipeline. There's pipelines all over this country. Most of them are 40, 60, 80 years old. Now they're going to put in a state-of-the-art pipeline from Canada down to Texas that is going to be a lot safer than the pipelines that are out there today, but yet they're screaming about environmental concerns. And meantime, people are paying $3.75 a gallon, at least in Missouri, for gas, over $4 a gallon here in Washington, D.C., and people cannot afford it. Everything in your studio here, everything in your office, everything in your home, if you look around, I guarantee everything sitting there rode on a truck at some point. When diesel prices go up, gas prices, delivery cost, it's all passed on to the consumer. In fact, I've got a friend in the trucking business, and I asked him, I said, "Aren't these fuel prices killing you?" "Has to be, just killing you." He said, "Well, not really." I said, "Really? Why not?" He said, "We just pass it on." Said, we put a tag on, so that means that those office desks you're buying and office chairs and boxes of cereal and everything that's hauled on a truck in this country get an add-on price, and that's why we need to do everything we can. I'm offering all of the above energy policy, whether it's wind, solar, nuclear, whatever it is. We need to develop it, but we don't need to develop it under a false sense of it's going to work and put money into things like Solyndra and these far-flung ideas. Hey, we're a capitalistic society. If the capitalists can't make it work and make wind work or make solar work or whatever, what in the world is the government that spends 42% more than they take in doing what are they doing, loaning money to these private companies to develop electric cars and whatever, the solar energy, whatever it may be, and then they go bankrupt after we've loaned them millions and millions of dollars. So I'm all for private development, and I think that the water will find its own level.
Well, I tell you, on the Keystone issue, the other part of this that doesn't get the attention it deserves is, hey, this thing starts in Canada. Number one, we have a pipeline of our own. We call it the Alaskan Pipeline. It runs right through Canada down to the lower 48. But number two, these are our best allies in the world. They're our friends. They'd never disrupt the supply to us politically. They'd always do business with us. And if we don't build there, it's not like they can't build one west of Vancouver and sell this product
to China.
To China. And you know, I've talked to the Canadians about this, literally Canadian diplomats and business people, and it's pretty offensive to them. As one of the diplomats put it to me once, he was talking, and he tried to be diplomatic, but he said, you know, we're pretty upset and pretty shocked that this is the subject of political debate and discussion in your country, because we're your friends. We fought with you for 100 years all over the world. We're both free economies, and by the way, we're not a third world country.
Right.
You know, we care about our environment too. You don't
There's
have
not
to,
people that want to kill us.
You don't have to, instruct us into what's best for the Canadian environment. We're here to take care of it ourselves. So, you know, I just think, how would you turn and thumb your nose at a friend that's been that good a friend for that long?
It's been a complete mystery to me what this president's take is on that pipeline. Like I said, I know that the environmentalists don't want him to build it. The unions do. It'd create thousands and thousands of great jobs, and it'd lower the price of oil in this country, get us less dependent on the Middle East oil, and like you say, they're going to sell to somebody. China will gladly take it if we don't get our act in order pretty quick. And we're going to start next week in Energy and Commerce working that through, trying to speed along the Keystone XL.
Well, that's good. Well, tell me, we've got about 3 minutes or so left here. What, you know, you've been in Congress now a little over 2 years. You've had a chance, you've moved to an exclusive committee. That's an exceptional, you know, quick rise. I think it tells you what your colleagues think about you, because that's how you get to those committees. Number one, what are the things that you want to accomplish? But number two, what are the things that have surprised you the most about Congress and how it operates, either good or bad?
Well, as far as what I want to accomplish, getting the spending under control, that's pretty much what I ran on. Was we just cannot continue to spend our kids and our grandkids into oblivion. So that's the main thing that we've been working on for 2 years. But that kind of ties into the second part of your question. What have I experienced since I've been here? The lack of communication between even the president and his side of the aisle. You talk to Democrat congressmen all the time, the president doesn't talk to them. And thankfully, in the last 90 days, I'm more encouraged the last 90 days than I was the first 2 years I was here, Tom. And the president is finally starting to talk to the Democrats and the Republicans. He came to a Republican conference the other day, as you know, and I called a liaison from the White House. He came over January 23rd. I said, what I really want to see the president walk through the doors of HC5, which is the meeting room in the basement of the Capitol where we hold our Republican conference. And they announced a few weeks later that we were all going to the White House to talk to the president. Then a few days ahead, they called and changed and said, guess what? The president's coming to HC5. I mean, he's just a human being. He puts his pants on one leg at a time like we do. And he came in there. He had no teleprompter. He gave a great talk. We gave great questions and answer back and forth. It was just people talking to each other. Until we start talking to each other in this town, things are not going to get any better. And I think Chris Christie said it best. It's hard to hate up close, and when you know your colleagues across the aisle, it's hard to really hate them. And like Ronald Reagan always said, his famous statement was, don't hate the person, you can hate their policy. I mean, Ronald Reagan hated a lot of liberal policy, but he never criticized the person. And we've degenerated into that in this country where they stand back in corners and call each other's names. And I've kind of stood back on the sidelines for the couple of years that I've been here and not engaged in that, and just kind of moved and made my chess moves where I could, where I thought I could be beneficial to my constituents and to the country. But I think standing back in the corner and screaming names at each other is childish. It doesn't benefit anyone.
Well, and you've reached out to Democrats, and you know, I can just tell you, and I hope you sense this, you're just highly regarded on both sides of the aisle. I mean, well, part of made us the majority, but I think Democrats feel that way too about you.
I was 55 years old when I got elected. I'll be 58 in August. I don't have a long political future ahead of me, so it's not like, you know, that I need to be here, have to be here. I'm here because I want to make a difference, and I'm trying my best to be an honest broker and to help a situation that's broken. And I hope, I appreciate your comments, David. I hope that I'm being pretty effective in that regard.
You are. So with that, we'll cut it off, and welcome to Congress, and thanks for taking time to come to the show.
Thank you, Tom. I really appreciate it.
I want to go to Branson, man.
Oh, you come on over. You're always welcome.
Okay.
Thank you, buddy.
Good to see you.